Hi, I'm Christine. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with 15 books that define my taste. So I first saw this idea on Instagram from my friend Jess from Peace Love Books. She did a post onto this and then she did a video as well. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to totally copy her. I'm going to do the post as well. And why not do a video to chat about all of my favorites as well? This is just a super fun way to kind of share all of the things that perfectly define us as readers. Like all of our favorites are going to be different, of course. This has just been super fun to see what other people share as their favorites, as well as people like responding to the ones that I've picked and saying like those are their favorites as well. So like you kind of see who you have books in common with. So this was actually really easy to do. I felt like a lot of these like are going to be obvious that they're my favorites because I've talked about them a ton, recommended them a ton. Some of these though I've never talked about on my channel because I didn't have my channel when I first read these. So that's going to be super fun to talk about a lot of these and just kind of have like one spot where you can come and be like, are we gonna like vibe? Does she like the same books as me? Kind of those things. So this is just super fun. So basically what I said is what defines my taste is give me the bad boys, second chances, friends to lovers, broody heroes, all the emotions, single dads, world building, slow burn, badass heroines, and angst all day long. So those are definitely all of my favorite tropes, favorite vibes. If a book has those and has multiples of those, I'm sold, I'm dead, I'm reading that immediately. So if you have any books to recommend me that follow some of those tropes, definitely let me know in the comments below because I would love to find some new favorites. So with that out of the way though, we're gonna jump into 15 books that define my taste. I'm gonna do a quick rundown of them all and just kind of like get into it, and I'm so excited. And these are in no particular order, by the way, just of what I grabbed off of my shelves. So first up is Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. This is iconic. Sebastian St. Vincent, forever and ever and ever. This is the third book in the Wallflowers series. This is one of my favorite historical romance series of all time. Lisa Kleypas is top tier historical romance writer for me. So like, I just love her books. And this book I feel like is the epitome of what I love in her books. So here is the gorgeous cover, and we have the beautiful step back here with Sebastian and Evie as well. So this has so many of my favorite tropes. Sebastian is the ultimate bad boy hero. He's definitely a rake, and his world kind of gets thrown upside down when Evie falls into his life. So if you read the books in order, you'll definitely see why Sebastian is a bit of a rake, and he definitely has a reputation, and a lot of characters in the series don't like him. But when we get to his book, we definitely see a different side of him. And so in here we have Evie. She is shy, she's a wallflower, she has a stutter, her family is the worst and treats her like crap, and so she wants to get out from under her family's thumb. She wants to be able to make her own decisions, do whatever she wants in her life, and so she's like, you know what, the quickest way to do that is if I go and marry somebody and have a husband who can maybe help me out. So Sebastian is kind of brooding at his house when Evie rolls up there one night. She shows up and she's like, hey, let's go get married at Gretna Green in Scotland. Let's elope. Let's do this thing. And so it kind of goes from there. It's a marriage of convenience. They road trip together in their carriage, of course, on the way to Scotland. It is just so good. Like Sebastian is the ultimate, like, I don't want to fall for anybody type of hero, but he totally falls in line for Evie. He treats her so well. He's so protective and so caring. I just love these two together. If you haven't read Devil in Winter, definitely recommend any Lisa Kleypas book. I mean, I recommend them all. Next up is Lord of Scoundrel by Loretta Chase, and no surprise that this is one of my favorites as well. This is one of my all-time favorite reads in general, like not just of historical romances, just like my favorite book of all time, one of them I should say. So in here we follow another Sebastian and we follow Jessica, the heroine in here. Both of these characters are badass in their own way. Jessica Trent is one of my favorite heroines of all time. She is like the ultimate baddie. I love her so much. She goes head to head with Dane, the hero in here, like multiple times, and I love her for it. There were definitely some moments in here that surprised me when I was reading it, and I just love them so much. So basically in here, Dane is the ultimate rake. Again, we have that bad boy hero, and he's kind of one who is tortured and broody and doesn't think that he is capable of love or like receiving love and all of those things. And so Jessica kind of enters into his life. They meet, they're both in Paris. She is there for reasons, and then they kind of just keep bantering. This one is the ultimate like hate to love historical romance. They literally hate each other and go at it often. And so the banter in here is top tier. Dane, the hero, speaks Italian, so there is seducing in Italian, which is just so good. Kind of ends up into like a compromised marriage situation. So that is all I'll say. If you haven't read Lord of Scoundrels and you love hate to love, you love banter, you love historical romances, highly recommend. Then I have Just a Heartbeat Away by Cara Bastone. So this one, I feel like the cover definitely does not do justice for what this book is. So you'll see it and you'll think, oh, that's like super sweet. And it is, but like there's so much more. There's steam in here. It is slow burn though, so definitely just keep that in mind. Multiple books on this list I've actually reread, this one in particular as well, just because I love them so much. This is one of my favorite slow burn romances of all time. I love it. Basically in here we have age gap, we have a single dad hero. The heroine is a teacher at his son's school, and they end up kind of meeting that way. Basically in here at the start of the story, the hero ends up getting widowed, and so he loses his wife, and his whole world's kind of thrown upside down. He doesn't know what to do with his son. He's kind of just failing and dropping the ball with a lot of things, and so the heroine is his son's teacher at the time, and she basically calls him out, has like a parent-teacher conference, and is like, hey, like I know you're going through a lot, but you're kind of slipping here with your son's care and with his schooling, and so I want to help you out. Like, here's a list, here's things you need to do, here's the things you need to pack in the lunchbox, kind of like all of those things to help him out. And so he takes it and runs with it and becomes like the best father he can be. So we cut to a couple years later, and he ends up running into the heroine again, where the hero was always like kind of a workaholic dad, and so he's taken time off now that he is a single dad and spends time at his son. He like volunteers or works at the school, I think, part-time, and so he ends up going to this new school, and the heroine has just kind of transferred there as well, and basically she's like a school counselor, I think, or something like that, and so they end up crossing ways through there. It becomes a friends and lovers first. She's actually in a relationship with somebody. She's a lot younger than the hero, and so he doesn't like think of her as anything ever becoming of it, and so they just become friends, and she really helps him out. We see a lot of the son and the hero in here. Like, I love single dad romances when they have the kids actively in the book as well. This one, like, it's emotional. I just loved it. I love the like slow burnness of it all, and like when it starts to sizzle at the end, it definitely sizzles. So I highly recommend reading this one. I've read everything by this author, but this one still stands as my favorite. Next up is Between the Devil and Desire by Lorraine Heath. As you know around here, Lorraine Heath is my historical romance queen. I love all of her books so much. She's an all-time favorite for me, and so any book of hers is going to hit for me, but this one in particular is top tier. This is the second book in her Scoundrels of St. James series. I highly recommend the entire series. It is top tier historical romance. If you haven't read that series, go read it, please, and then come back and talk to me. Basically, this series is kind of like has an Oliver Twist take to it, where all of these characters that we follow, they all grew up on the streets. They were raised by a kind of kidsman who taught them to thief and steal and kind of get away. And so now they're all grown up, and they're finding themselves kind of intermingling with society and things like that. And so it is just so good. Like the class difference romances in here, top tier. In this one, we follow Jack Dodger, and he owns Dodger's drawing room. And so he has his own kind of like gaming hell. So in this one, the heroine actually ends up losing her husband at the beginning of the story. She's a duchess, and she's a single mom as well now. And so the story starts off with Jack Dodger actually inheriting or becoming the guardian of her son, the future Duke. And so we find out why as the story goes on, and it kind of goes from there with Jack and Olivia kind of butting heads a lot, because her thoughts are basically like, why is this stranger to us now a part of our lives? Why is he in charge of my son and the estate and making decisions for us? And so it kind of goes from there. It's just so good. Top tier, the whole series, but this book in particular and the next book are like my favorites of all time. Like, I love them so much. Next up is After the Storm by Laura Pavlov. This is the fifth book in her Cottonwood Cove series. This one you can definitely read as a standalone, but you will get a better appreciation for it if you've read the entire series. This is a small town series. We follow the same family, and so in here, the hero is a part of that family. So this book is just everything that I love. This was one of my favorite reads of 2023. This book is like the epitome of small town, single dad, second chance romances. It is so good. I was obsessed with this book. This book had me crying multiple times when I was reading it. I love it so much. It gave me all of the feels. Basically in here, the hero and the heroine kind of met as teenagers when she came to town, where he lived in the small town with his family, and they ended up kind of having a thing, but of course they go their separate ways. And now it is years later. The heroine has recently been divorced. She's a lawyer, and so she ends up coming back to the small town to just kind of like get back to a place that brought her happiness. And so she runs into the hero there, who's now a single dad to his daughter. And so we see them kind of coming back into one another's lives. This book gave me like the Notebook vibes, but in the best way, like not with a tragic ending. And so I love that for it. Like basically he built her this house, and he has an art room for her, and his daughter is the cutest thing in the world. I just love this one. The hero is a local veterinarian, and it just kind of goes from there. It is so good. All the emotions. I love this book so much. If you want single dad, small town, second chance, highly recommend After the Storm by Laura Pavlov. Next up is one of my OG favorites. So this is Elanor and Grey by Brittany C. Cherry. I love this book. This was the first book I read from Brittany C. Cherry, I think like 5 or 6 years ago at this point, and it has been ultimate love ever since. chance. I absolutely love this book. This is second chance romance. If you notice, a lot of these have second chance because that is my favorite trope of all time. So this one we get kind of a dual timeline as well, where we're following Elanor and Grey when they are teenagers and when they first kind of meet, and they're having all of those feelings that teens do. And so we see kind of tragically like life get in the way and just kind of pull them apart. And so it cuts to years later, where now Grey is a single dad to his daughters and he is a widower, and Elanor ends up becoming the nanny for him. Because of like life and things that have happened to them, Grey has totally changed. He's not the same guy that he was when they were growing up. He's totally closed off and just kind of cold and stoic and tries to push her away. And so I was just obsessed with this. I love his daughters in here and how Elanor kind of comes into their lives. It is just so good. If you haven't read this one yet, highly recommend. Such a beautiful one. Bernice Cherry books are going to make you cry, so just bring some tissues and read this one. Next up is Echoes of You by Catherine Cowles. This is the second book in her Lost and Found series. I love this book. This is one of my favorite Catherine books of all time. This one, again, we have small town romantic suspense, which if you know around here, romantic suspense isn't always my favorite, but when it's Catherine Cowles, it works so well. This one I would say is kind of lighter on the romantic suspense elements for the whole series, but yeah, this one's just so good. It has childhood friends to lovers, which is again one of my favorite tropes, and it is just everything. This basically, the heroine ends up moving back to their small town and she runs into the hero again, and they kind of pick up of being friends from there. This one has who did this energy, where the hero literally says that on the page because of some things that he finds out about the heroine. He's just like uber protective over the heroine, and I love it. I have my like tabs on this one as well because I love it so much. So good, emotional, just top tier. I love this book so much. If you want to pick up a Catherine Cowles book, I highly recommend this one. It is so good if you love childhood friends and lovers like me. Next up is A Chance at Love by Beverly Jenkins. Here is the absolutely stunning cover for this one. I am obsessed with all of Beverly Jenkins' original covers, and this one just like clinch cover goodness. I love it so much. So basically in this one, the heroine has been traveling with this group of women who are part of this like mail order bride system, and so she's been just traveling with them to kind of go off to her next adventure, and one of their stops ends up being in Kansas. There she ends up getting stopped by these adorable twins who are like, can you come and be our new mom? Will you help out our uncle? Like, he needs all the help with taking care of us. So the heroine kind of hits it off with the girls right away, and she ends up going back with them to their house to kind of deliver them to their uncle. She finds out that he's a farmer and he has had his hands full with his nieces that he is now kind of in charge of taking care of. So since the girls are kind of taken with the heroine right away, and he is as well, he ends up propositioning her and is like, hey, can you come and live here for a while, be the mom to these girls, and kind of help out around the house, help out with them while I try to search for a wife for myself. Of course, things don't end up going as planned, and these two end up falling for one another, and it's just so good. Beverly Jenkins writes top tier, smart, badass women so well, and the heroine in this one is no exception. I love her. She's a gambler. She's a self-made rich woman, and I just loved seeing her take control of her life, her finances, her sexuality. In this one as well, the hero has kind of had very little sexual experience, and so he has always been under the assumption that only men can enjoy pleasure because of course that is what he was taught by another man, go figure. So I loved how after their first and like terribly short experience, the heroine was like, okay, like what was that? And we need to have a talk. This one is just so much fun. Definitely one of my favorite Beverly Jenkins that I rarely see people talk about. So definitely pick up A Chance at Love if you haven't yet. Next up is Heartless by Elsie Silver. This of course is part of her Chestnut Springs series. I think this is book 2, and this book is just everything. It's definitely my favorite in the series. I love it so much. Basically in here we have a single dad, we have a nanny heroine, and it is just so good. Basically in here the hero has taken control of his family's ranch, and so he has always put other people's needs first and definitely doesn't look after himself. And so he has a son and he kind of needs help, I think for like the summer or something like that, and so the heroine ends up kind of rolling into his life. Willa is just one of my favorite heroines of all time. She's so sassy and opinionated and strong, and I love her so much, while Cade is more of the gruff, kind of rough around the edges hero who kind of just takes care of his ranch, takes care of his son, and like he is happy in life with that. But of course Willa comes into his life and kind of turns things upside down for him. It's just so good. The whole family element is so good. The steam is so good. I love in here how Willa kind of takes care of Cade for once, because like I said, he puts everybody else first. Is just so good. Top tier single dad nanny romance. If you haven't read Heartless, highly recommend. All right, so these two books were actually my favorite reads of 2022, so let's just continue on. So next up is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Basically Kennedy Ryan can do no wrong. I love her books so much. She is like on another level for writing. I swear her books are so good, so emotional. I love how they kind of transcend and don't really fit into one box of like they're just contemporary romances. Like they are just so much more, and I feel like they are very appealing to a broader audience as well because they hit so many emotional fictional elements as well in them, if that makes sense. So Before I Let Go is actually a second chance romance between a divorced couple. So in here we follow the hero and the heroine. They have been divorced. They are kind of co-parenting their 2 kids. They also are co-owners and run a restaurant business together. And so they are already in each other's lives. And we kind of see that there's still some feelings there between them and they kind of have to work through that. This book is so beautiful, so emotional, so good. I love it so much. I know a lot of people already love this book too, but if you haven't read it, definitely recommend Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Next up is Bloody Heart by Sophie Lark. This is book I think 4 in her Brutal Birthright series. This is a mafia romance. It's second chance. It has some other things that you figure out as the story goes on as well that are also some of my favorite tropes, but I'm not going to tell you because it would be a spoiler. So this book just so good. I rarely see people say that this is one of their favorites of the series, but when they do, I'm like, you are my person. We get each other. We know what's going on. This book is just everything that I love in a romance. It is, like I said, second chance. See the heroine kind of going against the culture and things in her family and of the kind of like familial expectations and things like that that are super heavy over her life. I just love this one. Like I said, mafia romance. This whole series is so addictive and so good and so fun, but this book is definitely top tier for me. I love the emotions that it's brought out. It has a time jump, which gets into the second chance element and is just so good. Some secrets are revealed. I love it. So good. Highly recommend and check it out if you haven't yet. Next up is Barbarians Redemption by Ruby Dixon. This is part of her Ice Planet Barbarians series. Honestly, any Ruby Dixon book is going to fit into my 15 books that define my taste, but this is one of my favorites, so I had to share it. Here is the gorgeous original cover, which the original covers, they cannot be beat. I love them so much and love having them as a part of my collection. I originally read the Ice Planet Barbarians series or started it back when it was super popular on YouTube, like I want to say like 5 years ago. So I have been a Ruby Dixon stan for quite some time. I love all of her books so much. The Ice Planet Barbarian series just has like a special place in my heart because it's the first series of hers that I read, but I've definitely read multiple of her other series since. She's just top tier if you want sci-fi alien romances. Ruby Dixon delivers. They are so much fun. Basically, this whole series takes place on this ice planet where these human women were basically like kind of trafficked through space and their ship ended up crash landing on Not Hoth, which is the planet where the series takes place. And so they crash landed there. And so now they're kind of intermingling and figuring out who actually lives on this planet, which are these gorgeously blue aliens. And so they've all been kind of surviving and figuring out life on this planet while bringing some of these like new human traditions to these people, which like kissing and things like that, which these aliens have no idea what to do with, but they are learning. And so in here we follow Beck and Ellie, and I love them so much. They're one of my favorite couples in the series. And so I had to share this book. Definitely recommend. Like I said, if you love like an alien sci-fi romance, I highly recommend Ruby Dixon. If you've been sleeping on her books, definitely don't. So if you've been following me for some time, you definitely know that Claire Kent's post-apocalyptic series is one of my favorite series of all time. So this book is Embers and it's a part of the series. This whole series, you can kind of read them as standalone, but you're definitely going to get a better appreciation of the series if you read them in order. Basically, this whole series takes place in a near future Earth where Earth was kind of globally impacted by this catastrophe. An asteroid came and took out Europe and definitely set the whole planet into a catastrophe. And so they are very much like survival stories, and these all take place after the impact happened, like 5 years later or so. It's very much like a harsh, dangerous world out there where the people who are left behind are definitely in like survival state of mind, and it gets kind of dark and gritty, and I just love them so much. I believe almost all of them are age gaps in the series, and they all have a very cold, stoic heroes where the heroines kind of have to coax things out of them first, and this one is like that as well. Basically in here, the heroine has been living with the hero, and he's actually the father of her late boyfriend. So she had been living with her teenage boyfriend at the time of when the impact happened, and he ended up passing away because a lot of people on Earth have passed away. And so it's years later now, and she starts to have some feelings for her late boyfriend's father, and it kind of goes from there. Very much survival stories. I love them so much. If you haven't read the Kindled series, I highly recommend. Next up is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I love it so much. This is a special edition dust jacket that I have on it, but this book is so good. Nesta and Cassian forever. I'm a Nesta stan for life. People who don't get her, I don't get them. So just saying that, I love this book so much. She is definitely a prickly heroine who you kind of have to get to know over time, and she has a lot of huge feelings and emotions, but like it is definitely hidden under the surface, but I just love her so much. I will love this book forever. It is one of my favorite books by Sarah J. Maas, and I just love it. This is of course book 4 in A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and this book is just so good. You definitely have to read the series series in order to get to this book, and I just love this book. It just, I get Nesta. I get this book, so it hits me differently. I've reread this book multiple times. Every time I love it even more. It's just so good. The fantasy elements as well, top tier, so good. I could talk about SJM books forever, so I'm not going to do that, but I love this book. Definitely one of my all-time favorites. And then lastly is a book that I actually don't have a copy of yet, but that is going to change very, very soon because I have a special edition on the way to me. But that is The Book of Azrael by Amber V. Nicole, so I will share the cover here. This book is a book that I just read this year, and I loved it so, so much. This is a fantasy romance, top-tier world building, slow burn romance. I was obsessed. This is the first book in her Gods and Monsters series. Basically in this series we follow, of course, gods and monsters. So basically gods, celestials, demons, kind of all of these very complex characters, tons of morally gray characters, a villainous heroine, which I am here for. I love this book so much. It's really hard to talk about this book because it will be like spoilers and I want you to experience the book as well. But if this is a fantasy romance that has been on your shelves that you haven't gotten to, like me, it took me a year to finally get to this book. Highly recommend getting to it. Don't sleep on it. So good. The fantasy, the world building, all of the kind of like realms and dimensions and these layers of these characters, just so good. I'm obsessed with this whole series. Can't wait for book 3 in May. All right, so those are the 15 books that define my taste. Definitely let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video, if you have some favorites that define your taste as well, whether that's tropes or books or any of those things. Definitely let me know. I would love to know. If we have any of the same books in common, let me know. Or if you want to like count out how many we have similar favorite books of, let me know that too. If you want to leave me an emoji instead, so let me know that you watched this video. Maybe leave me like the heart hand emoji, just because that's one of my favorite emojis, and these are all books that I love so, so much. So yeah, definitely do that. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I will see you in my next one.